girls. Life is girls. Life is girls. Life is girls. We have a lot to say and we hope you're listening.
Welcome back to Life is Girls. I'm your host, Aubrey. In 2021, a poll of young people in America found that 66% of Gen Z, that's people who are aged 12 to 27 today, say that our generation is motivated to create positive change. And I'm sure that we can all think of some examples. I know that plenty of people my age who are interested in changing the world for the better one day. And I know a lot of people who do at least a little bit of community service and who are willing to make changes in their day-to-day lives to support a bigger movement. But I don't know a lot of people who take on big changes outside of school or home, often because it feels impractical or out of reach. My guest today, Eleanor, knows what it's like to take on a big statewide challenge, and she's here to share about her experience. Eleanor, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
Yes, I'm so excited too. I think the first thing you should say is just to introduce yourself and just say a little bit of what you're interested in.
I'm a sophomore in high school. I love dancing and just like art and crafty stuff. I have a younger sister and I'm 15. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So good to meet you, and I'm so excited to talk about this topic today. So the change that you took on was to make it a requirement for schools to have epinephrine or stock epinephrine.
Right.
And that's a drug, in case anyone doesn't know, it's a drug used in emergencies to treat serious allergic reactions. So kind of tell us why it was important for you to start this project.
Yeah, well, my sister has a really severe peanut allergy and she's constantly watching what she eats just in case of like a reaction. She carries around her EpiPen everywhere she goes, and it's just like nerve-wracking, and it's a hassle just at school when she doesn't have access to it. So an allergic reaction like hers can be like life-threatening. She has to go to the hospital, and more kids have food allergies than in the past, and a lot of people find out about their allergies at school. And so it's definitely, you have to provide your own EpiPen usually. And so now the requirement is voluntary. Like you don't have to stock it. So it's just, my goal is to make it required instead of by choice.
Great. And so like your project, kind of like what was the kind of process of getting in to start this project? You're talking a little bit about it just now, but like what did you decide to do to like kind of address this issue?
We looked at kind of what it would be like to pass a law, and as a Girl Scout, I thought this would be a great project for my Gold Award. Yeah,
I totally agree. I think another thing that's like really interesting is that like this is not kind of an issue that feels like you can just tackle so young in your life, and I think it's really cool that you're doing that. But again, at a young age, I think no one's really tried it before. You kind of hear about older people doing it. So kind of walking into this as a young person, how did that feel? And like kind of what were you going through?
It was definitely like a feeling of like, there's no way I could pull this off. Like it's such a big idea that it was overwhelming at first, but I was also really excited about it. I thought that it could be really like cool if I did it. And this is like my first experience talking to like adults and like really advocating for myself kind of. And so it was very intimidating, but it was also such a, this is not going to happen moment, but I also wanted to make it happen.
Yeah.
And as I learned about it more and like talked to a ton of different people, it definitely made it feel a lot less overwhelming and a lot more natural.
Yeah. And I think going off of that, like, it's kind of hard to think about like the idea that like this is not something I can do. I think that's a lot of like what younger people are thinking right now, just because like we again hear about older people doing this. So going off of that, I was gonna ask my next question. As you were getting started, did you find that like when you were talking to people about this idea that they were like supportive, or did you think that it was hard because you were young and like the people that you were talking to kind of like ignored you because of your age?
I actually think being like a young girl helped a lot because you don't see this every day.
Yeah,
people trying to like make a change just in any way they can. So they definitely thought it was like interesting, and more people were definitely willing and open to hear about it.
That's great.
And we entered the process, and it was definitely like a moment, like we had to be brought down to reality because so many people were encouraging me. But we definitely had like that moment where like, oh, we need to focus and like actually like try and get it done. And it was a lot more challenging when we talked to people about it who weren't as encouraging, because there were those people who were like, this is not going to happen. Like, you need to like step back. This is really hard. And like, it was definitely like also some of the disencouragement, honestly.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I think like to get a better idea of kind of what you were taking on, can you explain like as best you can, and it doesn't have to be like super strict, but like what's it like to have a bill pass, and what do you have to go through? Do you know like the requirements and stuff?
Part of the process is like every other year in Texas is when you can like get a law passed. So it's like all of that time leading up to it, you're trying to get people like on your side to pass a bill.
Okay.
And it's messed up. A lot of like bills didn't get passed that maybe should have. And it's like, again, just not a good process. And you have to like get the House of Representatives and the Senate on your side to pass the bill by committees, like the educational committee, or to pass a bill.
Right.
And so I got really lucky because the first person I talked to was Representative Gina Hinojosa, and who was really like willing to pass a bill for me. But a lot of times you definitely need to talk to a ton of different people, and some of those people just might not be on your side in the process.
Yeah, and kind of going off of that, like because you have to talk to so many people, I'm just curious, like for you personally, how long has that kind of process taken, like in terms of time?
It definitely took over a year to,
Wow. Yeah.
Not over a year to like get the bill sponsored, but just over a year to like get it in the, what's it called? In the hearing.
Got it. Yeah. So I think like when people kind of go into this, that's something that you might not expect, is just like how long it takes. And like for I'm doing a Gold Award too, and I'm working with a nonprofit, and like I think the one thing I just wasn't ready for was how long it was going to take. Like our communication takes a long time. And I think like walking into this, the first thing is you're like kind of discovering that everything you do kind of, there's like, it's not perfect. It's not like a straight line, you know what I mean? Like there's just kind of like problems that you're like gonna discover along the way. But you were saying that like you're really passionate about this, and it's based on like having to do with your sister, and I think that's really cool. So I think what we could talk about is how do you keep pushing through, because it's something you're passionate about, even though it's like taking a long time. What do you do to keep pushing through?
Well, I had so many months where we weren't like hearing from anybody. I had to send a ton of different emails. I had to do a lot of research, and it just felt like my project wasn't going anywhere. And it was really like, it was kind of like stressful and just like I was feeling unmotivated, but I just like going back to that like initial feeling of like encouragement that you got from everybody that what you were doing is good. And then just like finding that like in yourself that like, I really do care about this, and it's something like making a change is like what I want to do. So it's just like finding those like feelings that make it all worth it in the end is definitely like really helpful. And if you keep looking, you will find those people that want to help you and are on your side, and just like who are interested in what you do.
Oh, I think that's great advice. I think like I truly don't think you can like take on something as big as what you're doing, or any project in general, like without really being passionate about it. But I'm wondering, like, this has been like just like a passion project, definitely. And like Gold Award, it takes such a long time, and you have to be ready for the time commitment. So I'm wondering, like, how's your Gold Award? This is like what you're doing for a Gold Award, as well as just something you're doing because you're so passionate about it. How's it like going, as well as like getting this bill passed, and kind of where are you at right now?
We didn't get it passed in the first run because usually it takes many trials and times to get it passed. So we're thinking about maybe trying again, but we started out very optimistic, but it was kind of out of our control. It wasn't like, I did my best, everything I could to get it passed, but sadly it didn't get a hearing. But by making an impact, we like focused on getting epinephrine stocked in schools that were like in rural areas who didn't have great access to hospitals. So it was definitely like not the path I originally wanted to take, but it was definitely still made a difference.
Totally. And on that note, like, that's another important thing that we're talking about is you had like this plan to go one specific way and it might not work out. And it's like really important to have like your plan B, which is what we were talking about. So on that note, like what's some advice that you would give for someone who's like has this plan of something that they want to do? For you, it's like passing this bill. For me, like I was working on a school award project and I wanted to do something about like sustainability because it's something I'm really interested in. And that didn't really the nonprofit I was working with didn't really need something that was in line with my interests. They needed something else. So kind of like what advice are you giving to someone who really wants to do a project, but maybe it doesn't go their way?
Yeah, starting out, I was so excited about the bill. I really had high hopes for it. But as we went along, the possibility of it not getting passed kind of became clear. And so it was definitely like, I could make this my Gold Award project and just stop there and be like, I tried. But then that really didn't feel good either. So I definitely had to brainstorm and like be comfortable with like changing my project a little bit, because I was definitely sad about not originally getting what I wanted to do, but I also learned that this is also such a good idea of like advocacy. And so I just like, it took a lot of brainstorming and thinking, and I just like, I was a little disappointed, but it definitely helps if you're not as like, hold on, what's the word I'm looking for?
Like single-minded.
Yeah. You have to definitely be more open.
Like
to new ideas.
Totally.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's great advice. Oh gosh, I think also I just wanted to say, like, we were talking about earlier in our pre-interview, like kind of how like the importance of compromise and like how we were going to work on that. And I think that's just like I've had it running through my mind, like working on this project, and I think it helps to like. It might not be your original path, but there's still like, if it's something based around what you're passionate about, like go for it and keep doing it. But like also based on that, like it sounds like you've kind of learned so much through this and you've definitely had to adapt, and it might not go your way. And it's like kind of a range of emotions we're going through, but like what's something about the process that you learned that you're like kind of still thinking about today, something like the biggest takeaway, I guess?
Is that you can't do it by yourself. And I've definitely learned through this that you have to ask for help. You have to advocate for yourself. You have to reach out to a ton of different people. And I feel like I carry that in many different ways. Like,
that's great. Yeah.
Advocating for like your mental health or advocating for yourself in school. So that definitely helped. And you have to have a lot of drive and enthusiasm in the project, because even though there are some bumps in your project, you still have to have that like motivation and will to do it. So that really helped get me through my project, was that to stay motivated.
Totally. And we were also like talking about this project because it's time consuming and because like it's just kind of a big endeavor, that it was kind of like something you had to balance with your schoolwork. I think people can forget, like, again, you're 15 years old. Like, we have school. We have lives. And so how are you like balancing, or is it challenging to balance like taking on this big project and also school?
Yes, I definitely put it off a lot, and I excused, like, my excuse is, I can't do it today. I have school. I have homework.
Oh my gosh, I
relate
to that.
And that definitely like I feel like definitely made the process a lot longer. So school was definitely a big factor. I would have like interviews or like something, Zoom calls during school, and my mom would take me out and I would sit in her car, and it just made it so stressful, because on top of my Gold Award, I had to make up for the school I was missing. It definitely made it more of a challenge.
Great. Yeah. I mean, not great. That was not what I meant to say. But I think it's like important that you're realizing the balance. And it's also like, if you're willing to like take on such a big issue, you're also like understanding that there's like other ways that you're going to have to make up for that, like making up for school. And so it's definitely not easy. And I definitely like so relate to like, oh, I can't do this project today, I have school. But like, again, like having that kind of mindset, I think is going to really hurt like one or the other is going to have to suffer, and that really makes the project suffer because you're not focusing on it. So I think like another thing we should talk about is like if people are interested in making change, like what do you think is a good starting place for that? Or like what advice would you give for them? They want to make change. And I know that's like a big thing to take on. Kind of what do you think should be the first steps you take?
Just really like being encouraged that you can do it and that it's so worth it in the end, but also like brainstorming like what are you passionate about and like take your interests and apply it in real life. But also people think making change is like just doing it on a grand scale when really that doesn't have to be the case. You can like look in your town and like see what is a big issue there and try and solve it like locally. And even if it's not a big thing, change is still change, and change just helps anything. Like
I also think that's great because it's so overwhelming to like try to just do something in general. I think like if you're like, I want to solve climate change, like that's how are you going to do that? So I think it's great that you're like, we got to start small and it's going to build. I think for small like thinking of the small things you can do is still so effective. So I think that's great that that's kind of like what you're addressing. And I also like, along with that, think the advice of like kind of being ready to compromise and like there's not one solution. Being flexible is really important.
For sure, yes.
So I know, because I know like things change. Things have to like, you're kind of going to have to constantly be doing like a tiptoe and improvise. So definitely. And then I want to like the last kind of question I have for you, like what benefit did you get personally out of working towards getting your bill passed?
Well, I just felt so accomplished like internally because I took something like so big as a gold award and made it my own and made it something that I was interested in and got it done. And really that just felt so rewarding. And also just the idea that I could have saved someone's life kind of just like makes it so much more like worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's definitely like encouraging to know like the life skills that I got out of it, like learning to talk to adults and like learning to hold myself accountable for like my own project was just, there's so many different rewards, and just knowing that what I did was like great.
Totally.
Like making change as like a young girl is so good and just rewarding.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also think like on that idea that you're talking about, like talking with adults, that one just stands out to me because I think we're so used to like at school, you're talking to other students all the time. Yeah. This is very different. You're talking to people that have like real jobs. They're like up in the system. They have, you know, like life that does not revolve around school. You're talking to adults, like grown people. And I think that's really hard. So like, I also just like want to know, like, how did you kind of overcome that fear? Because I think a lot of people like have a fear of reaching out, and they also have a fear of like kind of being the one in charge. As like when you're working with adults, it can be hard to be like, you're the one taking the lead because you want to see them as like an authority figure. So kind of how do you get over that fear?
I definitely felt like a lot of times I was being a burden by like emailing more than once, but I feel like realizing that, oh, maybe they just didn't have time to respond to me, or maybe they just accidentally like skipped my email, and really just assuring yourself that what they really are interested in you and your project, and they don't see you as a little girl who's trying to like be annoying. No, they see it as like, oh, yes, I could really help this girl. I want to help this girl. I just accidentally missed her email. And that was definitely a big part of like overcoming that. And also just learning how to email was really helpful, and like learning how to like word my emails in like a professional way. It was definitely different than like emailing your teacher about an assignment. So
I had this advice that you were telling me, like, you're not a burden. Like they want to talk to you. They want to help you. Running through my mind, working on like, since we did our, like we chatted for the first time, I was working on my project. I was emailing and I was like, didn't want to reach out, feeling scared. And I literally thought back on our conversation and I was like, no, I'm going to send another email. Like, really? I think they want to hear from me. Yeah. And I do think it helps. Like, I think also like getting over that initial fear and being able to push through is going to help you so much in the real world. Definitely. For
sure. This is a real life thing. Like,
totally. And like you're one step closer because you're so comfortable now. Yeah. It'll feel less scary in the future. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about is you were talking about like this is different from talking with your teacher, and kind of like on the note, how do you think this project that you've taken on is different from anything you've done at school?
Well, at school, usually you're around people your age, and if for like a school project, you're working with people who are like on the same level as you.
Yeah.
But this time it was like, I'm my own project leader. I'm leading other people, telling other people what to do. And that was definitely stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm usually like a follower, like I do what people tell me to do. So it's definitely like different in that way. And it just felt, I have to hold myself accountable for my own project, and I have to hold other people accountable as well. So that was very, very, very different from like anything at school.
Totally. I totally agree. Like teachers at school, they're going to push you to do like your assignments and they want you to succeed. And so they're going to like try to support you as best you can. And I think taking on these kind of projects is different because they're not pushing you the same way as your teachers push you. This is, like you said, it's your own project and you're the only one that's going to ultimately get it done or not get it done. So I think that's so much on you. And that's another thing you have to like learn, that it's as much as you put into it is what you'll get out of it.
For sure.
And that's completely different from school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's everything that we had to talk about today. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
This is so fun.
And thank you guys for listening to today's episode of Life as Girls. See you next time.
If you enjoyed this episode of Life as Girls, be sure to write a review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And a big thank you to our sponsor, the Girl Scouts of Central Texas. You can learn more about them at www.gsctx.org. If you are interested in sponsoring this podcast, or if you have a topic you'd like for us to talk about, email us at communications@gsctx.org. See you next time.